Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today marks the last day of the webinar series. I would like to thank all of you for attending our SOA Talk by Experts SIP webinar in conjunction with World Ocean Week, WOW 2022. I'm Deepanraj Subramaniam representing RRC UMT and I'll be your MC for today. Do stay with us till the end of the event as attendance link will be shown at the end of the event. Thank you. So, with 4 fabulous speakers attending the talk today, let us start with Dr. Jen Nie, a senior lecturer in University Malaysia Terengganu in the School of Marine and Environmental Science who received a PhD in Ocean Science from University Kebangsaan Malaysia, is here today with us. Her field of research mainly focuses on coral reef changes using sclerochronology, geochemistry, climate change, and episodic events. She received many awards, including Young Scientist Award IOC Westpac 2011 and Doksha Award in 2017. Without counting the minutes, let's welcome Dr. Jen Nie to our webinar series. Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you, Deepraj. Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson, and all the committee members with us today. So today I'm going to share a bit on Friends of the Sea, kawan-kawan si laut yang ada, because the sea is very large and very big. So I'm Jen Nie from Faculty of Science and Marine Environment, University Malaysia Terengganu. I'll be happy to share with you some of the interesting facts that we have about the Friends of the Sea. Okay, so when we start with the sea, the first thing most people would imagine is that you would see a blue sky, white clouds, and open sea. So the sea starts actually from the beach, anywhere you are. So the beach actually comes with a lot of organisms, and then after that we go into the sea, swimming or snorkeling, you will see different kind of organisms. But the sea is always blue, and if we are going into if you are swimming, you will see a lot of fishes. That is the most attractive friends that we can see from the sea itself. And fishes are very interesting. And then I think we have our last speaker here today here with us talking about the sea. So apart from fishes, there are also other organisms that are very interesting and very large and endangered. For example, the green turtles here that you can see. And every organism create a story on its own. And for example, this green turtle were actually eating the seagrasses on the seagrass beds. And once it starts to chomp on the seagrasses bed, it creates a sandstorms because it just trying to move using their own flippers to dig into the sand, and then they would eat on the rhizomes of the seagrasses. So every organisms are very friendly, and sometimes they are not that friendly actually. So apart from organisms on the sea, of course, one of the main users of the sea is human being. So one of the example here, you can see that most of the ports or the beach or the seaside, there are plenty of boats because of fishermen, they went out to fish, or it can be because of tourism activities where people go out for recreational fishing. It can be for fishing or visiting any islands. So the ecosystem of the sea is very large, and the users of the sea is also very varied. So as the friends of the sea, most of the time we will see that we would want to explore the sea itself. So one example here is that most of the sea that there are people interested to visit would be the fringing reef. The fringing reef means a coral reef by a land. Okay, it can be an island, it can be a mainland. For example, in Malaysia, you have Port Dickson next to the mainland, or you can have different kind of islands. And we have a lot of islands in Malaysia for people to visit. So my main topic here, because based on my research, I'll be talking a bit on coral reef. Very generally, some of the organisms that you might find if you are going to snorkel or to dive. So what are coral reefs? Reefs mean terumbu, right? Terumbu means an area which composite of different organisms. And coral reef means they are dominated by corals. There are different kind of reef available, but the main focus of my research would be on coral reef. So to start off with corals, we start off with what do we know about corals? So corals come from a family called Cnidaria, and actually it's a cousin to a jellyfish. Like, it's a very big difference. How come jellyfish and corals can be cousins? Because they have the same symmetrical body shapes, but it's just that jellyfish actually drift. So they drift according to the current, and they actually can also direct their movement. They cannot swim wherever they want, but they can direct. For example, they can move their body to the left, to the right, to the top, to the bottom, but they will follow the current. Meanwhile, for coral itself, they are stagnant. They are attached to a benthic. They are attached to the substrate itself. So how do we relate to the left and the right picture? I always give a very superhero imaginations, where if you take the jellyfish that you can imagine, and then after that you squeeze them out into very small, I mean, you use your superpower hero from your naked eye that you zoom, you minimize the jellyfish, right? And then you overturn it, and then you use the body of the jellyfish, attach it to the substrate. And that is how actually is almost similar to the jellyfish. So the coral is actually attached to the bottom, and they are living organisms. So if you can see the coral reef picture here, it is so large. Actually, it's almost, here might be about 2 meters wide. But if you look closely, if I zoom in and help you look closely, there would be similar pattern of jellyfish. You can see rounded here, rounded patterns, and then actually they have tentacles that comes up and capture food. Okay, and this size is about 1 centimeter. So 1 centimeter of a coral can be composite of like 10, 20, even hundreds and thousands of small polyps, we call them. And it depends on the whole coral reef area. You might have thousands and millions of small polyps that actually grow and become a coral reef itself. So this is even more clearer. You can see the tentacles coming out from the polyps itself. So you can imagine now clearly like the jellyfish, like they have tentacles outside. And the next question is that how come they are so colorful, right? And it is because they have this mutual relationship with symbio, one of the dinoflagellate, which Dr. Wee would actually explain more clearer later. And they have this mutual relationship between these two. And coral itself is a living organisms. They are animals, but they live happily together. So that is kind of the friends. We need friends everywhere we go, right? And the animals and plants here are actually friends, and they need each other. Okay, and if the friendship were disturbed, so I would always say, if we disturb them, for example, they have one parameters here that I wrote down is temperature. The distribution of coral reef is actually from 30 degrees north to 30 degrees south. It's a very wide range from Japan all the way down to Australia. So the temperature range is very large. But they are in a certain temperature because corals are substrate. They attach to one area, so they don't move and find the right temperature. So for example, in Malaysia, the temperature is always between 29 to 31. That is the temperature of the coral reef that we have, for example here in Malaysia. So if the temperature suddenly spike up to 32, right? So what happened is that the relationship, the friendship between the animals and the plants start to break, and then the dinoflagellate start to release it from itself. So we can see here coral bleaching. The coral became pale color, it became white color because we see the skeleton of the coral itself. And then after that, they are not dead yet, right? So in this picture, actually they are bleached, but the corals are not dead because they can capture food. So if given time for them to recover, the friendships start to join back together again, then they will grow happily ever after again. So the diversity of coral reef in Malaysia, actually in our Southeast Asia, so the most famous, the Coral Triangle Initiative, including Indonesia, Philippines, and few other countries. Of course, Malaysia is also part of it, especially in Sabah. But of course, Malaysia, where we are now in east coast of Peninsular Malaysia, we are also in the boundaries, right? So one of the example is that how do we determine the Coral Triangle Initiative is looking at the biodiversity. What are the organisms in the reef, in the ecosystem itself? So one of the latest finding that we found out, for example, in Johor, out of many years of finding, many years of discovery, we found out that now we actually documented 261 species of hard coral in Johor Islands itself only. So in the east coast of Peninsular Malaysia, we have Redang Islands, Tioman Islands, Perhentian Islands, but Johor is one of the largest archipelago, and 261 species is actually high. So at the end of the studies, we concluded that our east coast of Peninsular Malaysia are about 400 species and even more. So we can actually like compete with other countries that have high biodiversity. We need to keep on finding and searching what are the organisms. So for coral itself, there are many types of corals. It can be branching, it can be turbulate, and you can see them in different form, okay? And they can be in different colors. There are even some, we call them the mushroom corals, which they are not attached to the bottom. There are also corals that are very famous and they are fast-growing corals, the branching coral, especially Acropora. And then we also have very slow-growing corals. They can grow in between about few mm's to few centimeters a year. A year, right? So for example, these corals, one of the largest corals that we encounter in Malaysia, this is a massive corals, and they grow about 1 to 2 centimeters a year. So this coral is about 5 meters high, and from our research, they were estimated to be about 250 years old. So that is from our research. So they are older than any of us living right now, right? So of course, the friends of the sea is that you can see here, apart from corals, there were fishes, okay, associated to the corals. If we have corals, we have fishes, so they live together because the fishes need shelter and also provide them with smaller food and habitat in the coral reef itself. So I'm going through a few other pictures and we can see, before we go into that, the importance of coral reef is that they give us most of everything that we need. Okay, we need food, so we would go fishing. We would need some recreational, we need to see some interesting facts or interesting organisms. We go snorkeling and diving, and they provide a lot of comfort to us. But do we really give them what they need, right? So about friends of the sea, just want to show you some of the pictures. Are they friendly? For example, this grouper, they are very grumpy. If you look at the picture, they are grumpy fish, right? And they are not that friendly anyway. So they will poach by the coral reef, and then after that, they will wait for the food to pass by, and then they would chomp on the fish itself. So you see them, most of the fishes or organisms in coral reef, they are colorful, attractive, interesting, but they are not that friendly. Some of them are friendly, but not all, right? So the other example here is sweet lips. This is the juvenile sweet lips, and people like me diving would find it very interesting because these fish, when they were juvenile, they would swim like dangdut. You know, they will keep swimming, and then you can see the tail keep moving. But when they grow larger, there would be just a nice big fish to be harvested and eat. Most of people would go for big, large fish for consumption. The other here is garden eel. this picture was taken quite far away. That was about 5 meters away from where I took the picture. I zoom in. If you look at the sandy bottom, there were little bit, those, the small, those were the eels. Okay, they are not friendly. They are very shy. Okay, if I go closer, what they do, they would hide back into the holes. That's why the picture was taken very far, so I can see them. So you can see them coming out, finding foods. So, but if we go closer, they would hide themselves. So they are very shy organisms also. And if you can see, this picture is a scorpion fish. This fish comes with venomous spines. So most of the time, I would suggest anyone that goes snorkeling or diving, please do not touch anything at the bottom. Okay, you doesn't know what it is. It looks colorful, it looks like a rock, but actually there is a fish like camouflage to the reef itself, and then once you touch it, then it will be very, very painful, right? So that's why I say not very friendly, but this is confirmed very friendly, and it's very famous. And most of the time when I ask school children, they will say, Nemo. No, they are not Nemo. Nemo is the character in the movie. This is an anemone fish. There are a lot of species of anemone fish, and actually it associates with anemone. So you can see the bubbles at the backs, that is anemone, and associate to it is anemone fish. So only these two organisms are friendly to each other. No other fish would come and stay in the anemone because the anemone would sting the fish. So you can see the relationship, the friendship are very limited in the coral reef ecosystem itself. The other thing is here, I can see here is soft corals. Apart from hard coral that build up the coral reef itself, there are also soft corals. Okay, they don't build up the skeleton, but they are also very colorful and give shelter to other fishes. Apart from coral itself, I think we are lack of some organisms that associate with the corals that people always miss it is the seagrasses. Right? We actually have very big seagrass bed down at south of Johor and Merambung, and there are also a lot of seagrass bed in Johor Islands, and they provide food from the sea turtles that you see earlier just now. It also provides foods for dugong and other fishes that actually associate with the seagrasses. So seagrasses is actually very similar to any grasses that you see outside. Right? They have roots for them to hang on to the bottom. So if you go to a seagrasses bed, you actually almost like a football field. So it's green all over. And in Malaysia, we are very fortunate because the coral reef and the seagrasses in south of Johor, they're actually living next to one another. Okay. A few more other interesting organisms that people might not be able to see from snorkeling. Diving would be the best because diving you can go closer. So these, if you can see the picture here, we call them the orangutan crab. It is about 2 to 3 centimeter, and then it was given the name orangutan crab because it is easier for us to give common name rather than a species name. Right? If you can see here, I will show you if you. This is the eyes, okay, and they are very hairy. That's why we gave them the name orangutan crab. One more organisms that SOA actually listed in the book, and also one of the endangered species that we have is these sea kraits. Okay, sea kraits synonym to sea snakes. Okay, they are land snakes and they are also sea snakes. So sea snakes have adapted the life to be paddle tail. The tail is actually paddle shaped, and then they would swim. They are not only at coral reef area, they actually venture out into the open sea to look for food, to venture around. If you are snorkeling, if you can see sea snakes, please do not try to catch it. Okay, they are very, very venomous also. Do not let them have a chance to bite you. Of course, the teeth is not as strong as land snakes, but it's just like don't take the risk. Do not take the risk, right? Let them swim. If they come to you, let it swim, and then just do not try to catch it and give threats to the organisms by the sea itself. So if you see something very long in the sea, just leave it. Let them be. Sometimes they would go to the beach. So by the beach, when there are lots of crowds, people would start to go to the beach and then use sticks or whatever, try to move it. Just leave them. Okay, they know what they are doing rather than we interrupt their life. Of course, corals back again. I always find corals fascinating. They comes in different shape. This is Montipora. They comes in I call them the cabbage, the flower, the plates type. So if you look from the bottom, from the top, right, you can see that it became like kepingan biscuit, right? It looks very tempting. And one more thing is do not touch. The other thing is do not try to step on anything. Because as I say, they grow about 1 to 2 centimeters a year. So for example, these corals is about 10 centimeters, so they have already grown about 5 to 6 years. But if you step on it, you would just break them into pieces because they are fragile and they are easily broken. So if you are going out, try to just swim or snorkel all the way out and then come back as you swim and snorkels. Do not go halfway, you see a rocks and then you try to stand on it. Right? That is not a good practice in a coral reef. And this is nudibranch, very small. It's about 2 to 3 centimeters. It's very colorful. A lot of the divers find them very fascinating. They have 2 rhizophores and they have the filter at the back. They comes in different variety. There are thousands of them. And then, of course, there are also shrimps that is very small. Most of the time, you eat shrimps or prawns that is large that you put into your mouth. But for example, this one is about 1 centimeter diameter length. So it's transparent. A lot of the organisms under the sea, they camouflage. They try to hide from predator and also hide from humans because human is one of the biggest threats. This is more colorful. This is about 10 centimeter big prawns. It looks spiny. They always stay with sponges. So behind here, it attached to sponges. Actually, behind here was a fish. I took this picture during night diving. So at night, they are more active. And at the back, there is actually a parrotfish was sleeping in a cocoon, but I didn't put the picture. So there are also fishes that sleeps during night time. Of course, this is a normal conditions of a coral reef. So if they are very friendly. If you go swimming or snorkeling, you will see them coming to you, especially if you are bringing food, for example, bread or squids. But that is also not a very good practice because all the organisms are naturally in the habitat. They know what to find the food. So if humans interrupt their food, for example, if you're a human being, I feed you pizza every day, right? So of course your diet be changed and then you become wider and wider because you eat pizza every day. So it might happen to the fishes also. So if you give them bread, they doesn't know how to find the natural food anymore. So it's one of the not so good practices also. And you can see here, the more variety of corals, the more different shapes of corals and other organisms, you will see there are more fishes. So coral reef is a very complex ecosystem, and this complex ecosystem is that there is no one direct answer to everything. So they are all interlinked to one another. They need one another. That's where the friendship became. Okay. At the end is that I would always end my talks with threats. There are lots of threats. Global pressure is very large. It is not about individuals, but if we play our roles, it would be beneficial to the globe, beneficial to any ecosystems, and of course, human being. Either you are positive or negative. But for me, everyone is a negative to a natural ecosystem. But try to be positive by helping, by reducing pressure, by reducing fishing, deforestation, development, and other pollutants. Right? In this SOA and INOS activities, they provide a lot of different approach. For example, how to recycle plastic, what actually we can do, reduce the plastics. So protecting the earth starts with you and me. Right? Everyone play a major role, even though you don't see it. Like if you carpool, you don't see the function of carpool. It gives you a lot of problems of carpooling because have to wait for friends, have to wait for their time, right? But it benefits because you are reducing your carbon emissions. And education is very important nowadays, education is not only in classroom, education, it can be anywhere, and YouTube is so easy. So there are lots of things that you can do, not necessary that you are by the beach, then you can do conservation and help the marine ecosystem. But if you are at Kuala Lumpur or anywhere you are, you can actually play a part of protecting our earth. All right, I think that's all from me. Thank you very much for your time. If you have questions, I would take in before I would have to leave early for another meeting at 10. Okay, thank you.
Hello. Hello. Hi, Doctor.
Hi.
So we did receive few questions from the crowd.
Wow, okay,
So
thank you.
one of it would be, how long does it take for the coral to recover from bleaching?
This is an interesting question. It depends on where the coral are. So one of the project we did actually with Dr. Wawa here, that we try to look at how long for it to recover. Some takes days, some takes months. And even one of the experience from my colleague from Singapore is that in Singapore, the coral bleach, even for 6 months, it was bleached and it have not recovered fully. But after that, it recovers. So it depends on the situation. Does the situation brings, some of the corals after 2-3 weeks, they would bleach and die. Some would maintain bleach for long term. So depends on where the coral is.
Okay, which brings me to the next question. What's the difference between dead coral and bleached coral? How to differentiate?
Okay, bleached corals, they are not dead. You can see them very white skeleton. That is the skeleton that it grows. So it was, the picture was white, and you can see a layer of actually the polyps itself that is transparent. That is bleached coral. But if it was brownish or there were algae growing on top, then means the polyps also die and algae comes to overtake it. So that is dead coral. So it must be dully white. Then it's bleached coral.
Okay, Doctor. So we have the third question would be, do soft corals bleach as well?
Soft coral have no zooxanthellae symbiodinium. It's different. They don't bleach. Or maybe someone else. Maybe Dr. Boo later can answer the question.
Okay, so that's a carry-up question for the next session. And we did receive the last question would be, what soft corals are made of?
Soft corals are made of tissue that have silicates. So to identify soft corals, we look at the spicules. So it comes with spicules and soft tissues. For hard corals is carbonate. Yeah. So it's two different things.
Okay, thank you, Doctor, for answering all the questions.
Thank you. That's all. Thank you very much. Bye.
Hello, guys, once again. Thank you, Doctor, for the lovely sharing. Especially as a diver, I do see corals whenever I dive, and it did fascinate me all the time, especially during fun dives. Okay, proceeding to the second speaker of the day would be a lecturer from the Institute of Climate Change, UKM. He graduated from University of the Ryukyu, Okinawa, Japan, with PhD in Marine and Environmental Sciences in 2020. His PhD research focused on phylogenetic variation of symbiotic algae hosted by widely distributed sessile marine invertebrates. He has collaborated on research in 5 countries that are Malaysia, Japan, Taiwan, Palau, and Saudi Arabia. Let's welcome Dr. Hin Boo to give his talk. Welcome, Doctor.
So let me share my screen prior to this. All right. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, Doctor.
Sure. So a very good morning to Professor, doctors, ladies and gentlemen. Before I start, I would like to thank UNT, INOS, and especially...
Excuse me, Doctor.
Sorry?
Can you speak a bit louder?
A bit louder. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me right now?
Yeah.
Sure. All
Okay.
right. Thank you very much for inviting me to give a speech today. And today I would like to talk about studies of coral reef associated organisms at marginal reefs. Why marginal reefs? Marginal, as Malaysia has a huge, good coverage of our coral reef at different location, different environment. I will explain to you later why Malaysia is a good experimental tank to study coral reef organism in face of climate change. And as the chairperson has introduced me, I'm Hin Boo from Institute of Climate Change or Institute Perubahan Iklim of UKM. So before we start here, this is the overview of my talk today. I'll go from coral reef and link it to climate change, explain what's marginal reefs, and later on, what's my research in Malaysia recently, and lastly, what you can help in order to study the coral reefs in Malaysia. So like Dr. Jen Nie has mentioned in a prior presentation, so coral reef is a very biologically diverse, beautiful, and charismatic ecosystem. And because of that character, it always becomes the center point of marine biodiversity and conservation. However, in order to accommodate this massive biodiversity in its ecosystem or its habitats, this coral reef ecosystem is relatively sensitive to environmental change. As Dr. Jen Nie has mentioned prior, so coral reef has a certain range of environment, such as a range between 20 to 30 degrees of a water temperature, salinity between 30 to 40 parts per thousand, and light intensity. Light intensity is important, as I'll explain later, whereby this limitation of light intensity limits the distribution of coral reefs, especially those colorful and beautiful reefs, at less than 60-meter depth from a sea level. Aside from that, they also require a certain number of concentration of nutrients such as nitrate, phosphorus, and aragonite, which will help build the coral reef building corals. So please remember these three stated environment drivers or environment parameters, and I'll explain later on why Malaysia is a good, especially Peninsular Malaysia is a good experimental tank. So with that parameters limitation, most of the reefs are limited to 30 degrees north down to 30 degrees south, as you can see in this world map. And due to this environmental range limitation, coral reefs are currently in threats, especially when it comes to climate change. So to define climate change is a phenomenon whereby it is a change of from anomalies from a usual weather that is found at a certain locale. So climate change such as increase of annual temperature, erratic weathers, and also sometimes climate change, not just the warming of global climate, there's also a sudden drop of temperature or erratic storms. So a photo evidence of climate change is, as you can see in this photograph, that was taken between 110 years, 115 years apart, it was taken at the exact spot, whereby on the left, taken in 1890s, where you can see ice caps, icebergs floating on the lakes. And by 2005, you don't see any ice caps. You see little ice caps and no icebergs anymore on the lake. And the most intriguing part is that you can see in 2005, they already have folios or plants, trees growing on the hills. And this is all because the warming of the climate that has caused a shift of ecosystem, a shift of the environment. So the warming of the earth has been increasingly correlates with great evidence that our human activities, especially after the in post-industrial revolution, back in the 19th century. And as you can see, as our carbon dioxide emission footprint increases, so does our climate and temperature. So this increase of global temperature does really affect coral reef, especially those reef building corals that Dr. Jen Nie has showed you earlier. This is because, as you can see, the blue line represent the hard corals, and the black line represent the sea surface temperature anomalies, which means the changes of sea surface temperatures with the average. So as you can see, every few years apart, like 10 or 5 years, there will be a increased spike of temperature. However, as you can see, for the past 10 years, our sea surface temperature anomalies has been increasingly increase in frequency. And where there's an increase of sea surface temperature, there's also a decrease, showing evidence of decrease of hard coral or reef building coral cover. So why is it so? Because as you can see, coral reef is a highly diverse ecosystem, and it is built by reef building corals. And reef building corals, they have a very important symbiotic relationship with a small little single cellular algae called the Symbiodiniaceae, or here on we call it a symbiotic algae. And this symbiotic algae, they provide metabolic or food to the reef building corals by means of photosynthesis. And in return, the reef building corals provide the symbiotic algae with medium for photosynthesis, nutrients that require for photosynthesis, and last but not least, a protection on the symbiotic algae from other predators. However, if there's a increase of temperature, or a decrease of temperature, or increase of too much light intensity, or too little light intensity, whereby it sway from the certain range that we have established earlier on, the relationship between the symbiotic algae and the coral will break down. And hence, once the relationship breaks down, the coral will kick out the symbiotic algae in order to protect itself from a certain harmful mechanism due to the unbalanced relationship between the symbiotic algae. With that said, kicking out the symbiotic algae from the host itself will tend to make the host lose its color, lose its vibrant colors. And so that phenomena is called coral bleaching. So why coral bleaching is so crucial and important? It is because most of the reef building corals, especially those that host symbiotic algae, rely 95% of their food or metabolic requirements from this symbiotic relationship. So when they remove the symbiotic algae out from their own system, then they only have 5% left to scavenge for their food, to rely on the food. And so with that said, that is why there's a time limit whereby when the coral is bleached until it faces death, which is around 2 weeks to a month, and sometimes longer depending on the environment, as Dr. Jen Nie mentioned. And so that range, that particular range is very important. And with the climate change and increasing erratic weathers, the coral reef is currently in under threat, under pressure, due to the swing of the environment out of their comfort zone. However, not all is that doom and gloom. There are some reefs, some coral reefs that are or associated reef organisms that can tolerate the range outside of the comfort range. So these tolerant organisms sometimes will take over the reef and become reshuffle the composition of the reef and become its dominant organism. And such environment that provide them to reshuffle we take all the reef itself that is outside of the comfort zone of a certain reef building corals. We call it the marginal coral reefs, which coral reefs environment that live under suboptimal environment condition, such as low light, too high light intensity, temperature, high temperature, low temperature, or even sometimes acidic environment. And so we can actually find coral reefs at different marginal environments, such as high temperature areas, whereby Red Sea, you can find coral reefs at Red Sea. And in 2017, when I visited Red Sea, the temperature was around 36 degrees Celsius. And I can feel my sweat rolling down my body while I dove there. And I can find coral reefs all along the coast of the Saudi Arabia. And secondly is a river mouth ecosystem. That river mouth sometimes discharge a huge load of fresh water into the surrounding areas. However, some river mouth coasts, we can find a good coverage of coral reefs. And last but not least, volcanic vents. Volcanic vents, we don't find it in Malaysia, but places with acidic ocean such as Palau, Indonesia, or even Japan, we can find reefs nearby to the volcanic vent that's spewing out carbon dioxide that acidifies the surrounding reefs. So how do these coral reefs, how do these coral reef associated organisms can survive in such area? Because some of them, they do host certain type of symbiotic algae that provides them with the required metabolites of food. And this symbiotic algae has a wider range of tolerance as compared to other symbiotic algae. So such symbiotic algae, they are still within the same family, Symbiodiniaceae, and we still do not know what type definitively what type is good at what environment, but we can roughly guess by taking samples from certain marginal reefs and to know what environment they can tolerate. So there are certain type of symbiotic algae like the Fantastic Four, right? There are some like Mr. Fantastic. They are flexible, they can be found everywhere, and they are ubiquitous. However, sometimes they have a certain tolerable range that cannot provide them the edge for other symbiotic algae. And there are some like Invisible Girl. They provide a certain chemical that provides a barrier for them to fight against high light intensity, like a sunblock lotion, natural sunblock lotion. And there are also some symbiotic algae like the Human Torch. They are thermophiles. That means they are thermotolerance. They can tolerate temperatures as high as 40 degrees, and they can survive in warm areas. And last but not least, there are also the hardy ones that they have higher than average tolerable range of other symbiotic algae. And sometimes they can be hard to expel out from the host, but with a setback of some physiological detriments to the host itself. So thus, there are different types of symbiotic algae currently in our ocean and hosted by different types of corals, reef-associated organisms. These different types of symbiotic algae has proven that it provides a better edge, or it increased the resilience of the host that hosted those symbiotic algae. And so let us move back to Malaysia. And Malaysia has as I mentioned, Malaysia has a good coverage of coral reefs, maybe the peninsular Malaysia to the Borneo. However, in more than 10 years ago, it's very hard to get a more detailed data, but more than 10 years ago, there's a report came out that more than 90% of the reefs in Malaysia experience medium to very high threats. And with this pressure on our national coral reefs, so will they survive climate change if the pressures maintains and climate change keep on stacking the odds against them? So I would like to know how our coral reef survives in different environments. And lucky for us, we have 3 different ecoregions or marine ecoregions in Malaysia. As you can see from here, there's number 12, number 9, and number 6. Number 12 is the Straits of Malacca. Number 9 is the South China Sea or the Sunda Shelf. And number 6 is the north of Borneo. So these 3 ecoregions, marine ecoregions, they do present a different or distinct environment, so much so that if you go visit these 3 different ecoregions, the composition of the marine organisms may be different. Most likely will be different from this among the 3 of them. And for especially for number 12 and number 9, Straits of Malacca and South China Sea, they have 2 very distinct marine environments, especially when it comes to temperature and light intensity. These 2 things are important, especially for the symbiotic relationship between reef organism, host and symbiotic algae. And as you can see, South China Sea, it has relatively clearer water, relatively pristine, and lower temperature range as compared to the Straits of Malacca, where it's usually muddy, low in the turbidity or the visibility range from you to how far you can see is around, like, best day 5 meters, 10 meters. But whereas in South China Sea, you can see as far as 20 meters underwater. So, and the most important part is the temperature range. The Straits of Malacca is at a narrow channel and is protected by the Peninsular Malaysia and Indonesia counterpart. And so it has a very stable and warm seawater throughout the years as compared to the South China Sea. And so it is a good experimental tank to study the symbiotic relationship between these 2 distinct environments. However, in order to study both sides, Straits of Malacca and also the South China Sea, we require one species, a very specific host that can be found at these both areas. And this host should also host symbiotic algae and can be found at very stressed reef environment. And lastly, it's easy to identify, so we don't have to go and scavenge around looking at nooks and crannies for this host. And it's very hard to find the candidate because of the environmental range, environmental differences between these 2 environments. But lucky for us, we have a reef-associated organism, a zooantherium. We call it Pelitoa tuberculosa. So Pelitoa tuberculosa is a reef-associated organism. It's a zooantherium. Zooantheriums falls in the same group as hard corals and soft corals, but they are neither both. They are neither soft coral or hard coral. They are in the group themselves called the zooantheriums. So the Pelitoa tuberculosa can be found across the Indo-Pacific Ocean, and we have records all along all the Indo-Pacific Ocean, but there's a huge gap in Malaysia. Yes, there are records of Pelitoa tuberculosa in Malaysia, but it is not official yet, and hopefully it will be soon. So this is my subject organism that I will go around the Peninsular Malaysia to collect them and to look at their symbiotic algae. Are they any different from the pristine South China Sea or with the Straits of Malacca? And so we've been going around for the past 2-3 months at the coast of South China Sea, at the Peninsular Malaysian coast of South China Sea. And we've been successfully collected some samples. However, we have yet to visit the other side, the Straits of Malacca. And now here comes the part that I might need your help. So zooantheriums, especially Pelitoa tuberculosa, there are unofficial records all around Malaysia. However, studies on them are still far in between. And I might need diverse marine biologists, if you do find zoantharians in the waters of Malaysia, I'm much appreciated if you can contact me and tell me where they are with a photo. And I probably can identify them as best as I can, so that we can record them in Malaysia. And secondly, with regards to coral bleaching, Paletua tuberculosa is also since it's a ubiquitous reef associated organism, we can use it as a subject to set to monitor future bleaching event, because Paletua tuberculosa they bleach earlier than normal reef building corals, but they can survive much longer because they only rely 60% of their metabolites, their food source, from the symbiotic relationship. And so there's been research and activities done in Japan whereby they ask volunteers to monitor Paletua tuberculosa at the coral reefs. And by using these particular color cards, these color cards has 6 point score hues with 4 types of typical coral colors. If you can print this out, laminate it nicely, and if you detect any coral reef bleaching events, print this card out, laminate it nicely, take a photo with this card with the bleached coral, and we can determine the bleaching score or the bleaching state of the said corals. And this is how we use it to determine the color scores underwater. And with that said, be safe, take care, and enjoy the World Ocean Week ahead. And before I wrap up my talk, these are the acknowledgements that I would like to, these are the people and foundation that I would like to acknowledge throughout my studies. And before I end everything, I would like to announce that my Institute of Climate Change just launched a new course, master by coursework on climate change that will start next year. And if you have any inquiries, please contact our administration. And lastly, I'm also doing some R programming workshop here and there. And if you're interested, you can contact me personally. That's all from me. Thank you.
Check. Thank you, Doctor, for the wonderful sharing. I hope we are aware of the symbiotic relationship between coral reefs and organisms in marginal environments. And extra knowledge for a marine biologist like me. So, Doctor, can you talk more about R programming, your workshop? Like, what's the purpose? So on.
Okay. Our programming workshop is it's a statistical programming is a statistical language. It's a programming language meant for statistical analysis. So like we use primarily use SPSS, we use StatsXL, we use a lot of software to run statistical analysis. So R is a freeware where it can run a lot of statistical analysis. The only problem with R programming is it has somewhat small, slightly steeper learning curve because you have to learn how to program, how to code before you can do some statistical analysis.
Wonderful, Doctor. And also something new I learned is about zoantharian, like they can be an indicator of coral bleaching. Something very new. I just heard today, and hopefully the others would benefit from this too. So, Doctor, have you ever found a zoantharian in Malaysia?
Yes, I found one. I found a lot in Bidong Island. I just visited Bidong last 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, Doctor, I was there too with you.
Yeah.
Okay, Doctor. Once again, thank you, Doctor, for the sharing. See you soon.
Sure. Thank you, everyone.
Sorry, Doctor. I'm extremely sorry. You have a question?
Yes.
From
please.
the crowd?
Yes, please.
Okay, it's from Noor Salwa Baharuddin. Thank you, Doctor. All 4 different types of symbiotic algae, are all of them can be found in Malaysia?
Here's the fun thing. We are currently have limited studies on symbiotic algae in Malaysia. So that's why I would wish to establish awareness of studies, especially in Malaysia. Yeah, there are some symbiotic algae that can be found, especially Cladocopium and Burusdinium has been reported in Malaysia. But except for these are the genus, the genera name of symbiotic algae. And symbiotic algae has a lot of species, a lot of types, genotypes, and has been recorded all around Malaysia, all around the world. But we still need a lot of studies in Malaysia and to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Also from Facebook Live, we did receive a question. How long is the lifespan of the coral reef?
Lifespan, unfortunately, no idea of the lifespan, because there are some like the Porites that has been recorded for hundreds of years old.
Oh, something I heard was corals did outlive dinosaurs. Is it true, Doctor?
Outlive, I will not say that outlive, but some we do find fossils of coral reefs, or coral reef fossils of them, but outliving it, I'm not so sure about that. But thank you for the questions.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. Thank you so much for your sharing. Coming up next, Associate Professor Dr. Seah Ying Giat is a lecturer and researcher at the Faculty of Fisheries and Food Science, University Malaysia Terengganu. His research interests includes taxonomy and molecular phylogeny of marine fishes and marine ichthyology of Malaysia. He is currently affiliated with South China Sea Repositori and Reference Center, RRC, Institute of Oceanography and Environment, where he aids the curatorial team in the extensive marine fish collections, and an associate researcher at the Marine Ecosystem Research Center, University Kebangsaan Malaysia. Welcome, Prof.
Refer there. Okay. Slide pertama. Okay, terima kasih kepada juru pengacara. Okay, so hari ini memang saya akan guna bahasa kebahasaan sebab memang saya rasa untuk tajuk ini memang mendekati kita kalau kita cerita dalam bahasa kebangsaan. So hari ini tajuk saya adalah ikan kekek mak iloi-iloi dan ikan gelama mak ilai-ilai. So mungkin lagu ikan kekek ini selamanya kita pernah dengar, tapi lupa dia macam mana. Seperti gambar yang saya tunjuk ni, di sebelah kiri saya adalah ikan kekek. Okey, di sebelah kanan saya adalah ikan gelama. Okey, gambar ini macam kelihatan mereka dua ni nak berduet untuk menyanyikan lagu tersebut. Okey, terima kasih kepada pengacara sebab dijemput untuk menceritakan kepelbagaian ikan marine di Malaysia. Okey, sebenarnya saya rasa ini merupakan salah satu tajuk yang sangat besar. So saya akan cerita, kebetulan saya buat ikan kekek dan ikan gelama. Okay. So untuk mendekati yang berhujah dalam bahasa English tu, sebenarnya ikan kekek adalah refer kepada ponyfish ataupun slipmouth. So sebenarnya kalau ada peluang, nanti saya akan ajar bagaimana nak membezakan kekek, okay? Dan juga ikan gelama adalah croaker. Tapi sebenarnya saya ada tanya apa maksud iloi-iloi dengan ilai-ilai. So saya tak dapat jawapan. Dia sekadar macam ada satu pantun ataupun bayangan dari segi untuk cerita tu dijadikan lebih lancar. Okay? So daripada masyarakat Melayu. So sebenarnya sebelum kita lihat kepelbagaian marine kita ni, ikan marine kita ni, kita terasa bahawa perairan kita memang sangat terbentang luas, jauh berbeza dengan daratan. So kalau kita lihat memang kita mempunyai pelbagai habitat. Tapi saya nak kata sebelum Dr. Jen Nie dengan Dr. Wee tu, mereka kata habitat lebih kepada coral reef, seagrass semua tu. Tapi kita biasanya terlupa adalah dasar lumpur dengan dasar pasir. Dia memainkan peranan yang sangat penting kepada kepelbagaian ikan di Malaysia. So sebenarnya kita boleh dapat banyak benefit daripada kepelbagaian ikan yang ada di Malaysia ni. So secara kasar, okey, daripada dunia, kita ada 36,000 spesies ikan di seluruh dunia. Dengan penambahan setiap tahun ada 400 new species. Okey, semua maklumat tersebut kita boleh dapat di dalam Esmeyer Catalog of Fish. Sila catat Esmeyer Catalog of Fish. How about Malaysia? Kalau kita lihat dari segi biodiversity of Malaysia, kalau kita lihat waskulah plant memang jauh digaji dengan lebih teliti berbanding dengan ikan. Kalau kita lihat ni, dekat Malaysia ni kita ada hampir lebih kurang 2,000 spesies ikan, di mana 1,400 adalah ikan laut. Itulah adalah pengajian kebakaran saya, di mana di UMT kita juga ada pengajian untuk ikan air tawar bersama dengan UPM dan USM. Kalau berbanding dengan perairan Taiwan, kalau kita lihat di sudut kiri yang atas tu, mereka mencatat lebih kurang 3,000 spesies. Berbanding dengan Malaysia, kita hanya ada sekadar 2,000 sahaja. So saya sentiasa tertanya-tanya sama ada kita kekurangan pengajian ataupun memang kawasan kita ni adalah jauh rendah daripada ikan yang sepatutnya kita ada. Kalau kita lihat dari segi coastline, land area dengan ocean area, kita mempunyai peratusan yang jauh lebih besar daripada Taiwan. Berapa banyak kali ganda? 3 kali ganda, 9 kali ganda dengan 4 kali ganda. Kalau kita lihat dari segi perairan, kita mempunyai 4 kali ganda perairan kita. Tapi jumlah spesies yang kita ada tu memang sangat sikit. So sebenarnya itu mencetus kegarahan saya untuk mencari apa terjadi di Malaysia ni. Adakah mereka masih lagi tersembunyi? So kalau kita lihat, saya percaya kita memang suka makan. So dari segi sumber perikaran kita ni, memang kita lihat hasil pentaratan tu biasanya adalah daripada pukat tunda. Itu yang pertama. Kedua adalah pukat jerut. Yang ketiga adalah pukat hanyut. So itulah rupa bentuk pukat tunda. Merupakan salah satu peralatan yang sangat sesuai untuk menggaji kepelbagaian ikan. So itulah merupakan salah satu peralatan yang sentiasa dapat menghasilkan banyak ikan kekek dengan ikan gelama. So pada masa yang ini, kebetulan saya buat kajian ini adalah berkaitan dengan ikan kekek dan ikan gelama. Yang di bawah tu adalah pukat jerut, di mana yang ini adalah sesuatu peralatan yang agak baik untuk perairan kita sebab kita boleh menumpukan kepada jenis pentaratan yang kita nak, jenis ikan yang kita nak tangkap tersebut. Mungkin di Malaysia, kalau kita lihat ikan kekek ni biasa dia akan dijadikan sebagai ikan kering. Tapi baru-baru ini mungkin dari segi sumber penghasilan kita ni semakin menurun sikit. So ikan kekek dah menjadi masakan singgang. So saya pun pernah cuba, rasa dia hampa sikit. Tapi kalau campur dengan singgang tersebut, okey juga untuk dirasa. Tapi kalau kita lihat di negara lain seperti Jepun, Taiwan, Filipina, Vietnam dengan Thailand, memang mereka suka sangat ikan kekek. Saya pernah lihat bahawa dia boleh jual seperti kekek ketapang. Nanti saya tunjuk gambar tersebut. 2 ekor boleh jual lebih kurang RM30 Malaysia. Agak unik. So sebenarnya dia merupakan salah satu potensi perniagaan kita. Kalau Malaysia ni kita jarang makan, why not kita ekspor kepada pihak orang Jepun. Okay. So ini adalah hasil daripada pukat tunda. So biasanya kalau akan nampak yang warna perak keperakan tu, itu adalah kebanyakan adalah ikan kekek. So saya tak tipu kamu, memang jauh sangat banyak. So biasanya satu kali pukat tunda tu naik, kita perasan ada banyak ikan kekek. So sebenarnya berapa spesies mungkin kita tak pernah fikir. Mungkin ada yang kata 10, 20, jauh lebih banyak lagi. Okay, kalau kita lihat ikan kekek ni, dalam satu buku yang diterbitkan, so kita dah mencatat lebih kurang ada 20 jenis. Tapi kalau kita refer kepada rujukan yang sebelum-sebelum tu, memang di kawasan kita ada lebih kurang 23. So, apakah yang menyebabkan dia dinamakan ikan kekek? Pertama, biasanya mulut dia boleh tunjuk ke depan. Tapi kebanyakan ikan ada boleh juga untuk disembuhkan ataupun ditarik keluar. Tapi untuk kumpulan ikan kekek ini, dia boleh sama ada ke atas, ke bawah ataupun ke depan. Yang kedua, dia mempunyai kepala yang bahagian atas tu adalah naked ataupun tanpa sisik. Yang bahagian bawah badan dia ada mempunyai sisik yang sangat halus. Okay. So biasanya ikan kekek ni kalau saya menjelajah di jeti pentaratan ikan tu, mereka biasanya tergolong dia dalam kumpulan ikan kapas. So saya nak cari ikan kekek tapi dia tunjuk saya ikan kapas. Apa yang membezakan dua tu? Kalau lihat mulut memang sama, tapi kalau lihat sisik di badan dia memang berbeza. Sisik dia kasar sikit, besar sikit. Lepas tu kepala dia juga ada sisik. Itu adalah perbezaan ikan kekek dengan ikan kapas. Tapi juga ada yang sentiasa kata itu bukan kekek, itu adalah ikan cermin ataupun ikan temuduk. So kita lihat yang untuk bahagian anak panah tu yang warna merah tersebut, kalau kamu lihat ini adalah kekek ketapang. So kalau kamu lihat bahagian sirip atas tu dia adalah sambung. Kalau untuk ikan cermin ataupun trevally, dia berpisah. Perasan tak macam ada satu lekuk sana. Yang kedua ialah di badan dia bahagian berdekatan dengan bahagian ekor dia tanpa sisik yang keras tu. Tapi mungkin kita tak biasa dengan ikan cermin. Tapi saya percaya kamu mesti pernah makan ikan cenjaru. Betul tak? Yang biasa ekor dia kita tak makan. Betul tak? Sebab ada sisik yang sangat kasar tu. Untuk kumpulan ikan cermin ni, dia memang ada sisik yang kasar tersebut. Kita namakan dia sebagai skewed. Okay, yang saya tunjuk di anak panah warna kuning tersebut. Yang ketiga boleh membezakan adalah dia mempunyai luar ruzi keras yang terpisah daripada sirip tersebut yang saya tunjuk dalam anak panah hijau tu. Kamu boleh lihat di bahagian cermin tu ada luar sisik halus tu. Bukan sisik, sorry. Ruzi keras yang halus. Di mana kekek tak ada. So, harap anda semua boleh membezakan ikan kekek, ikan kapas dengan ikan cermin selepas webinar ini. So, saya betul sebab kita memang berada di dalam hotspot, biodiversity hotspot. So, saya sentiasa percaya bahawa kita mempunyai kepelbagaian ikan yang jauh lebih banyak daripada perairan orang lain. Okay? Tapi memang betul, kita berjaya merekodkan 23 spesies. Di mana Taiwan hanya berjaya 22. Yang Filipin berjaya merekodkan 19. Champion. Okay? Terlebih satu. Okay? So, tapi dekat sini saya nak highlight bahawa memang kita mempunyai new specimen base record. Bermakna pertama kali kita dapat simpan ikan tersebut dalam bentuk spesimen di dalam RRC INOS UMT. Saya percaya RRC INOS UMT ni boleh sebagai satu hub yang utama untuk rujukan haiwan marin. Di mana kita boleh menjadikan tempat kajian untuk masa yang akan datang. Yang warna kuning tersebut adalah pertama kita ada spesimen tersebut. Selama ini kita hanya terbuti dalam bentuk gambar sahaja. Okay. So secara jumlah dia 23 spesies. Yang saya nak highlight lagi satu spesies ialah memang tak pernah direkod di Malaysia. Memang tak pernah direkod di Malaysia. Okay. Iaitu Eublyklias plankton. Okay. So selama ini kita punya gambar yang ditunjukkan dalam buku tu adalah sebelah kiri saya. Sebenarnya dia adalah Eublyklias jonesii. Nama dia adalah kekek mahkota. Okay, kekek mahkota. Tapi untuk Eublyklias plankton so far yang saya dapat jumpa sewaktu kita cuti-cuti keluar negara, di Taiwan, di Filipin ada. Tapi Sabah Sarawak walaupun ada sebahagian perairan yang agak dalam sikit tapi saya tak jumpa. Okay. So selepas ini saya rasa kita dah selesai isu tu, iaitu kekek mahkota adalah sebelah kiri, yang sebelah kanan tu tidak wujud di Malaysia. Okey, selepas kekek saya nak cerita ikan gelama. Kekek mungkin orang rasa dia kurang harga sikit, tapi untuk ikan gelama ni dia jauh berharga, jauh lebih tinggi daripada emas. Okey, kalau cakap emas ni semua memang minat. Okey, kamu boleh simpan punti renang tersebut ataupun punti udara tersebut di mana dia mempunyai harga yang sangat-sangat tinggi. Kalau kita lihat dalam gambar ni, kita ada jenis gelama yang besar, yang kecil. Tapi di bahagian tengah atas tu kamu nampak tak? Yang itu semua adalah swim bladder ataupun gas bladder ataupun punti renang. Dia memang berharga, especially di masyarakat Cina. Mereka percaya dia mempunyai khasiat yang tertentu untuk mengubati. Okay. So kalau kita lihat, bukan sahaja di Malaysia, di seluruh dunia, especially di China, dia mempunyai satu harga yang sangat bagus. Dan juga di bahagian China, Japan dengan Taiwan, mereka suka makan ikan gelama. Tapi Malaysia ni kita jarang makan ikan gelama. Okey. So yang itu merupakan salah satu perbezaan Malaysia dengan negara lain. So kalau kita lihat sampai ke Taiwan tu, mereka ada juga sebagai satu tanda sembahyang untuk ikan gelama juga. Hari ini nak berkongsi kepada adik-adik yang baru masuk ini. So, kita sebenarnya ada punti renang yang sangat istimewa di mana spesies tersebut kita dapat jumpa di seluruh Malaysia. Kecuali Pantai Timur. Okey, Pantai Timur saya tak jumpa. Tapi di Borneo, di Melaka kita dapat jumpa. So, mungkin kamu pernah baca surah khabar ni kalau kita sentiasa scroll daripada berita tersebut. Limpah ikan terusan dijual RM60,000 sekilo. Okey, tapi hari itu saya pergi Mid Valley. Satu pasang sahaja punti renang tersebut boleh jual sampai RM100,000. Okey. So mungkin lepas itu mungkin ada ramai yang nak invest dalam punti renang rather than emas. Okey, yang saya tunjuk punti renang yang di bawah tersebut sebenarnya adalah jantan. Perasan tak ada dua line yang lutsina tersebut? Itu adalah buktinya dia adalah jantan. Jantan mempunyai harga jauh lebih tinggi sebab dia mempunyai struktur yang lebih tebal berbanding dengan betina. Okey. Okey. So dalam sepanjang kajian ini, Malaysia betul sentiasa mempunyai ikan marin yang sangat lumayan di kawasan kita. Kita berjaya menjumpa satu spesies baharu. Spesies baharu tersebut selama ini kita anggap dia macam ikan Rarimitis crossia seperti ikan gelama kuning daripada China. Tapi sebenarnya berbeza. Nanti saya tunjukkan apa yang membezakan tu. So ikan gelama kuning ni pertama kali saya jumpa adalah di Dungun. Di Dungun. Tapi selepas buat kajian ni muncul juga dia di Kedah. Okey, sebenarnya Malaysia ada. Tapi biasanya kita jumpa dia adalah waktu musim monsun. Tapi kita percaya selepas musim monsun ni dia akan bergerak ke Gulf of Thailand. Okey, untuk rehat sekejap lah sebelum kita jumpa dia lagi. Okey. So kalau kita lihat bahagian yang ikan yang di bahagian kiri atas tu adalah Rarimitis crossia, gelama kuning. Okey, di mana dia jumpa di China. Dan Rarimitis porietis juga di China. Yang kita Malaysia ni, dia lain sikit. Kalau kita lihat, cabang di punti renang tersebut, dia mempunyai dua unjuran yang berbeza. Di bahagian kiri bawah tu, dia mempunyai unjuran yang, balik ke slide tu, sebelum tu. Okay, mempunyai dua garis yang panjang. Tapi untuk porietis mempunyai satu panjang, satu pendek. Kalau kamu buka mata besar sikit. Tapi untuk Malaysia punya, kita mempunyai dua pendek. So itu yang membezakan dari segi ikan gelama kuning China dengan Malaysia. So ini merupakan Bahamat polycraticus di mana dia adalah ikan yang sekarang sebagai ikan gelama yang paling mahal di dunia ni. Okay? Saya boleh kata di Malaysia lah yang kedua paling mahal. Sebab yang pertama tu hampir pupus di China. Okey, yang kita boleh jumpa di China. Tapi ini sekarang memang konservasi diperlukan. Yang bawah tu adalah ikan kekek yang sangat istimewa sebab dia mempunyai sisik yang bergerigi di bahagian kepala dia. So saya sengaja letak gambar tersebut. So yang lain-lain ikan gelama ni kalau kamu lihat macam sama je kan? Betul tak? 1, 2, 3, 4 lebih kurang sama. Tapi mereka mempunyai perbezaan kalau kita mempunyai kajian yang teliti. Mungkin saya boleh mengajar sikit contoh. Jonius carona dia mempunyai spina yang ataupun di bahagian bawah tu mempunyai ruji yang kasar. Kalau berbanding dengan Jonius weberi dia mempunyai ruji yang halus. Tapi tak apa, kalau kamu minat boleh jumpa saya je, nanti ada email address, kamu boleh email saya. Okay. So how about Borneo? Borneo sebelum kajian dilakukan, kita ada 2 buku sahaja. Satu daripada Chin et al. 1998. Wah, lama dah berjaya mencatat 5 spesies. Okay. Lim et al. 2009. Baru sahaja boleh dikira mencatat 11 spesies. Tapi kita bertuah sebab dapat mencumpah 25 spesies di Borneo. Ada 25 di mana ada satu baru sahaja digelar sebagai spesies baru iaitu Jonius sasaki. Okey, Jonius sasaki inilah ikan yang setakat ini kita berjaya jumpa di Sabah dan Sarawak. Okey, so semenanjung Malaysia kita tak jumpa. So sebenarnya kita boleh lihat bahawa kadang-kadang ikan gelama ni dia tak hijrah ke tempat yang sangat jauh. Okey, mungkin dia suka setempat sahaja. Mungkin adik-adik yang suka tangkap ikan di kolam ataupun tasik kadang-kadang mungkin hanya dia di kawasan tersebut sahaja. Mungkin kamu kena jaga jangan tangkap sebarangan, betul tak? Mungkin kamu kena belajar, mungkin tangkap Sabtu ada niat dia untuk pelihara dia, betul tak? So jangan ataupun nak jadi sebagai makanan pun okey. So selepas kajian dilakukan, sebelum ini kita mencatat 19 spesies. Okey, tapi selepas kajian ni kita berjaya untuk memberi 2 nama baharu kepada ikan gelama kita. Okey. Lepas tu pada jumlah dia kita berjaya untuk merekodkan 32. Daripada asal sebelum kajian 19. Selepas kajian 32. Berapa kali kanda? Hampir 30%, 40%. Betul tak? So tapi kita masih lagi tak jumpa 4 spesies. So persoalan dia ialah mungkin dah pupus ataupun mungkin belum lagi jumpa dia di mana. Okey. Okey. So selepas kajian ikan kekek dan ikan gelama, kita sentiasa bekerjasama dengan kerajaan. Okey, di bahagian Kementerian Keksah. Okay, so kita ada satu sistem kita panggil MyBIS, okay, Malaysian Biodiversity Information System. So kita boleh memberikan maklumat apa kajian kita kepada pihak mereka. So mereka akan masuk dalam sistem tersebut. So kalau pelajar selepas ini balik boleh Google, kamu type MyBIS sahaja. Ada banyak ikan yang kamu boleh belajar di dalam tu. So masih lagi dalam proses dibangunkan. Tapi untuk bahagian ikan kekek kita dah ada masukkan informasi tersebut. Seperti slide yang selepas ini. Seperti ikan kekek ketapang ini. Okay. So harap untuk kajian yang kita lakukan yang selama ini dapat membangunkan dari segi khazanah. Okay. Ataupun rekod ikan gelama dengan ikan kekek di Malaysia. So ini adalah buku terbitan saya, okay, di mana ada di Pulau Bidong. So semua kenal Pulau Bidong kan? Okay. Lepas tu ada di Kuantan. Dan lepas tu mungkin pelajar pergi RRC Open Day tu kamu akan nampak sebahagian ikan lutsina. Okay, dia guna chemical untuk proses supaya kita boleh lihat dalaman, okay, tanpa merosakkan struktur badan dia. Okay. So ikan kekek juga diterbitkan supaya kita boleh sama-sama belajar. So semoga dari segi penerbitan ini kita boleh dibangunkan lagi. So mungkin pada masa hadapan dalam tempoh 3 tahun ini adalah untuk menghasilkan buku Pantai Timur Semenanjung Malaysia. So harap kita boleh mencatat lebih kurang 7 hingga 800 spesies dengan ada butir-butir spesimen yang kamu akan lihat di galeri tersebut, memang ada spesimen tersebut, itulah butir yang penting. Okey, terima kasih kepada semua.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Professor.
Okay.
So we did receive few questions from the crowd too, especially from Facebook Live. So the question is, are you the only taxonomist for this ikan gelama and ikan keke in Malaysia?
If in Malaysia, I would declare myself as the only study the ikan keke and ikan gelama. But if the worldwide, we have few collaborator. So especially ikan keke, we can collaborate with Japan. His name is Sheiichi Kimura. So he's a champion for the ikan keke in Pacific Oceans. And of course, for the ikan gelama, we have a collaborator from USA. Okay, so actually my subject of study, I have collaboration with USA and Taiwan and Japan. So that's all we can figure out what type of problematic issue we occur, so we solve together. Okay.
Also, another follow-up question. Hello, is there any interest in exploring the species of fish in Borneo?
Actually, Borneo is a good place for us to exploring because the Sabah waters have deep waters compared to Semenanjung, Malaysia. And of course, the Sarawak also have a very long extent of shallow waters. So I did once in 2017, but because of the changes of regulations, so we need a lot of permission before we can conduct the samplings. But preliminary result, we have almost 400 species. Just 1 month sampling from Tawau, travel, pass through the Borneo, and pass through the Brunei, and then we reach the Kuching. So I think I always welcome for collaboration because the ocean is too huge, too vast. So we need a lot of taxonomies. We can work together for Malaysia.
Okay, Doctor, which brings me to the third question. How do you sample?
Sample, normally I will focus in the fish landing board first. Because normally when we go for sampling, people, they prefer to sampling by themselves. But we already have a lot of resources. For example, we can work together with LKM and DOF. But sometimes the fish landing board is handled by LKM. So it's good for us to collaborate with them. So actually, all the books that I publish is collaboration with LKM. So they have a lot of resources, which mean that they hardly to identify what kind of species. So this is the involvement, the fish taxonomy and to the government sector.
Okay, Doctor, thank you so much. So
Okay.
that's all from the crowd.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof, for the ikan keke ma iloi iloi, ikan gelama ma ilai ilai sharing. I've never thought a person could come up with this title, but Prof Seah did. Terima kasih diucapkan kepada Prof Seah. Hats off for speaking in our national language. And also, hello and welcome to the 20 students who just attended the talk. Next up, the last speaker of the day would be the young and energetic Teo from UNIQLO. He's the junior executive in UNIQLO Malaysia's Sustainability Department. Teo is currently working on achieving and realizing UNIQLO's sustainability goals and targets through various initiatives. One of it would be our UMT's very own plastic upcycling livelihood project initiated by SOA My Ocean Hope by collaborating with UNIQLO Malaysia. Without further delay, let's welcome our guest to talk about the power of clothing. Teo?
Hi everyone. Sorry to disappoint you. So I'm not Teo. So just to let you know, Ron, unfortunately, he just tested positive for COVID. So unfortunately, he will not be able to do the presentation. So I will take over instead.
Thank you. Thank you so much for representing from UNIQLO. I just hope he's doing well, Mr. Ron.
Hi everyone. Can you guys hear me? Hi. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you, Ron.
All right. Okay. So we're very sorry. I apologize for this last minute change. So yeah, I before I got COVID, I was very energetic about this, but currently I am getting better. So just a little bit of sore throat and cough. So that's why I think it would be better if Diane were to take over this this presentation. So please take it away, Diane.
Thank you, Ron, and thanks for preparing the slides. So I basically just told him I would take over as of yesterday, but he still managed to prepare in time. So sorry to disappoint you guys, but let me introduce myself. My name is Diane. I am the Sustainability Manager of UNIQLO Malaysia. And I'm also doing a global role in the Fast Retailing Group, which is the parent company of UNIQLO. So I'm in the Social Innovation Sustainability team as well. And actually right now I'm doing this talk from Japan. I'm here on a business trip. So I heard in the past few talks, a lot of you were mentioning about Japan and how there's a lot of coral reefs and a lot of the research is being done there. So unfortunately, I haven't been able to visit any of these coral reefs. But yeah, UNIQLO, as you know, is from Japan, and we do love the marine environment a lot. So just to show you, yesterday I went to the store in UNIQLO Tokyo, which is in the Ginza area. So I took a picture of this huge display which was showing the Kaimana Beach in Japan. So yes, we do love the marine environment. And sorry to deviate a bit from the topics that you were all hearing about today, which was very focused on marine science and a lot of interesting things. I'm going to take you through corporate sustainability instead. So UNIQLO is one of the sponsors of this event this week. And also we've been working with UMT for several months right now. So we just wanted to share a little bit about our philosophy in sustainability as well. So just to share a bit about who we are as a start. So if you don't know, UNIQLO is a clothing retailer. We were founded in 1949 in Japan. We started as a textile manufacturer and we only opened our first store in Hiroshima in 1984. So we have been around for quite a long time and we have grown globally over the years. Right now we are in 25 markets and we have more than 2,300 UNIQLO stores globally. In Malaysia, we started in 2010. So our first outlet was the UNIQLO Fahrenheit 88 store in KL. And currently we already have 50 stores. So in Terengganu, we just opened our store this year in January 2022. So I'm not sure how many of you have visited so far. I hope that you like it and we are hoping to expand to other states as well. Right now, we are in almost all the states in Malaysia except for Perlis and Kelantan. So for Fast Retailing, our parent company, UNIQLO is not the only brand. There's actually 7 other brands under the entire group. But UNIQLO is definitely the major brand in this whole group. So we also have other brands like GU, Theory, which are selling different kinds of product lines, different target market as well. But UNIQLO is definitely the major brand, and it's the only one that is in Malaysia. So that might be the one that you're more familiar with. And our corporate statement is changing clothes, changing conventional wisdom, and change the world. So our founder really believes that we want to do business for the good of society. So everything that we do, we are always thinking about how we can innovate and how do we make clothes better for people, for their everyday lives, and to make it more functional and something that they can wear for a long time, maybe pass through different generations. And at the same time, how do we use our influence and our, our strategic position globally as a top retailer to also do good for society. So I know that it's a bit difficult sometimes to talk about, clothing and sustainability because we do recognize that there's a lot of environmental and social impact. Some of it is of course negative that comes out of producing clothes, and we are well aware of that. That's why we are very focused on also trying to make our entire business model more sustainable. And we are focused in 3 pillars in sustainability. So the first one is planet, where we aim to contribute to a better environment while producing great clothing. Society pillar is focused on using our business to actually give back to communities everywhere in order to help them live better lives. And then lastly is people. So people refers to more of our employees and the people who work in our supply chain to produce our clothes. So they might not be direct employees, but they're also the people who work in the partner factories that manufacture our apparel. And that's why we also want to make sure that they're working in a good condition and they also have opportunities to develop their careers. So the concept behind UNIQLO clothes is known as lifewear. I'm not sure how many of you have heard of this. So what is lifewear really? Basically, it's about making clothes that makes everyone's lives better. It's about having simple, high quality, everyday clothing with a practical sense of beauty. So maybe one thing you might notice when you walk into a UNIQLO store is you might feel that the clothes, some of them, they look kind of the same. Maybe every year if you go back, you might see kind of the same clothes or same styles. So that's actually part of our concept where we want to produce clothes that people can wear for many years. It's not something that is just in trend for that season or something that is just, hot for that brief moment. So we want clothes that you can wear maybe like as you move from different stages as a student, then you move to working life, you can still wear the same pair of jeans or same shirt. But it's not just about making that kind of stylish clothes, but it's also the function of the clothes. So we are very known for our airism and also heat tech clothes, which airism is meant for to give you a more cooling, and it's good for cold weather, for warm weather like ours. Whereas for heat tech is to keep you warm, which is very useful when you go to cold countries. But it's not just about clothing. So other than making clothes, we really believe that we want to turn our business into a more sustainable model. And that's why we are now looking at how do we make lifewear sort of a new industry. So our entire business model is looking at every aspect throughout the supply chain and how we can make it more sustainable. So from the diagram, you can see 2 circles here. On the left side is about how we are creating lifewear, how we create products. It starts from customers' voices because, of course, when we know what customers want, we can produce clothes that do not go to waste. So throughout the product design and then through the raw materials procurement, we are constantly thinking about how do we design clothes to be more recyclable, to use less energy. And then even in the production stage, there's also a lot of energy that is usually involved there. And of course, logistics, there's a lot of transportation, carbon emissions from that as well, up until stores and EC level. So EC stands for e-commerce. That's where a lot of the waste is also generated from the packaging and transporting clothes. And then finally, looking at the right circle, when customers have already, gotten the full use of products that they buy from us, we also want to make sure that we are able to provide them solution to accept back their clothes and to manage them responsibly. So we actually take back any UNIQLO clothes in our stores to recycle. Recycle it by giving it to people in need in Malaysia, and also to recycle into alternative fuel. And other than that, we are looking at reusing it by repairing it or extending the life of clothing. Other ways that we are exploring is potentially maybe reselling them in the future. This is still in the initial stages. So other than that, if you look at the bottom, in order to make our whole business sustainable, we are also trying to see how we can create more value on a global scale and involve more communities that we can support through different markets that we are based in, and to respect the diversity of all people who work in our company. So because this week is more focused on the marine environment, today I would like to talk more about some of the environmental initiatives that we are doing. So we do have 5 core environmental initiatives that we look at. broadly is to address climate change, to improve energy efficiency, manage water resources. Number 4 is to manage waste, maximize resource efficiency, and then lastly, to manage chemical substances. So looking at the supply chain and carbon reduction, basically the majority of carbon that is emitted from our business takes place in the supply chain, in the manufacturing part. So our goal is to reduce the carbon emissions by up to 90% by 2030 and to reach zero emissions by 2050. So some of the actions that we are doing to achieve this goal is to reduce the carbon emissions in factories in line with the science-based targets. So we are committed to that, to ensuring that the temperature, the global warming temperature doesn't rise by more than 1.5 degrees. And as part of this commitment, we are implementing a lot of programs together with partner factories to make sure that they are reducing the energy usage year by year. Secondly is to also source our electricity from renewable energy sources globally. So this refers to like stores as well as offices. Right now in Malaysia, we are already sourcing 50% of our electricity from renewable energy sources. And we are aiming to achieve this globally by 2030 to have 100% renewable energy sources. In some markets like the European Union markets, we have already achieved 100% renewable energy. And then third is to use raw materials that produce lower levels of greenhouse gases. So as we did the assessment throughout the supply chain, we also find that a lot of the carbon emissions comes from the raw materials that we use to produce clothes. So we're trying to use more recycled materials as well, because that has been shown to have emit less carbon. And then lastly is to reduce emissions through more efficient logistics. So we are consolidating a lot of the shipments from different brands and trying to minimize the transportation, as well as even little things like reducing the carton size can actually help to reduce emissions a lot. So we've added some QR codes on each slide. In case you want to find out more information, you can just scan, because there's a lot of content behind this actually, but I don't think we have enough time to go through all of them in detail. So you can scan and it will take you to our website where there's a lot more details there. So secondly, in chemical waste management and water resource management, obviously from clothes production, we know that there's a lot of chemicals that are used to ensure that clothes have a certain function, for example, to be water repellent or to have the kind of texture, the soft or silky texture. So our goal here is to have zero discharge of hazardous chemicals from partner factories. And we have already achieved 99.9% of zero discharge as at the end of last year. So some of the actions that we took here were to sign the Greenpeace Detox Solution Commitment that was signed back in 2013. So from then on, we were actually actively working with the partner factories to minimize the use of hazardous chemicals. And we have eliminated several, such as those used in industrial washing machines or in detergents, and also those that were used for water repellent clothing as a finishing agent. And then we are also conducting regular wastewater inspections at our core fabric mills and garment factories. So we do a lot of audits to make sure that the water that is really coming up from the factories, they are really treated and they are not going to pollute the river sources behind the factories. And then lastly is generally to reduce the water usage throughout the entire supply chain through our responsible mill program. So we do depend a lot on the cooperation with partner factories to commit to reducing energy and water usage throughout the supply chain. So microplastics, I'm sure this is something very familiar to all of you, especially those studying marine science, biology. We are aware that the use of synthetic clothing like polyester does result in shedding of microplastics. A lot of studies and articles have been written about that. So we are trying to work with many NGOs and also organizations like the Microfiber Consortium and the Clean Ocean Material Alliance in Japan to solve this plastic pollution issue. So some tests have already been done. We have measured the volume of microfibers that are shed during the washing, and we are analyzing the results. So we have found in preliminary testing that the use of recycled polyester, for example, it has actually led to much lower levels of microfiber shedding. In fact, more than 70% of more than 70% less microfiber shedding when we use recycled materials. But these are all still in the testing stage. So it's not something that we can really announce yet until we have very clear results. So just an example of some of the UNIQLO products that we have right now, which are produced through more sustainable manufacturing processes. One kind of it is recycled materials products. Like I mentioned earlier, we are trying to incorporate more recycled materials in our clothes. So our goal is by 2030 for 50% of our products to be using recycled materials. And in fact, for some materials like the polyester clothes, we should be able to achieve 100% recycled materials in a few years' time. So we have already produced several clothing lines that are made from recycled polyester and also some from recycled nylon. The recycled nylon is made from the pre-consumer fabric. That means fabric that is collected from the factory floor during the production process. So all these are also recycled as well. And then the second type of product that we have are those that are responsible materials. So the difference here is responsible refers to production processes that use less energy or use less or zero chemicals, and also taking into consideration the working conditions of the farmers or those people who work in the mills as well. So we have certification for some of the materials that we are using, like down. So down is a feather from the goose or duck, and we use them a lot in our down jacket. So we ensure that we do not source from farms that they practice force feeding or live plucking of the animals. And we also look at responsible sourcing of cotton. We are hoping to procure all cotton from sustainable sources by 2025. And generally, the main concern in this area is to ensure transparency and traceability so that we can very accurately identify where the material came from, right down to the first, the farm at the very end at the very start of the supply chain. So this example on the recycled PET dry X polo shirt, as I mentioned earlier, recycled polyester is one of the key products that we have that's using this kind of recycled materials. So we found that using recycled materials helps to reduce CO2 emissions through the production process. And we've actually worked with our very strategic partner, Toray Industries, to develop polyester fiber that is made from recycled plastic bottles. So during the first batch, when we first launched it in 2020, we managed to recycle over 48 million bottles to produce this line. And compared to crude oil, which is how polyester is made, these polyester chips that are coming from the recycled plastic bottles have actually helped to save 2/3 of CO2 emissions. So what we do is once the bottles are collected, they are grinded and washed, and then they are turned into polyester chips and used to make thread, which are then used to sew the clothes. So right now, some of our clothes are already made with up to 75% recycled polyester, and this will become 100% in a few years' time. So another concept that I want to introduce to you is UNIQLO concept. So this is our initiative to promote, more circular ways of managing clothes that we sell through recycling, reusing, and reducing. So firstly, when we sell any clothes, we also want to take responsibility for them when our customers no longer want to use them anymore. So that's why we accept clothes at all our stores. We have a recycling box there, which customers can just come and drop in their clothes throughout the year. And we actually have recycled some of these clothes into new items, like the recycled down jacket. So right now we have only started with the recycled down jacket, which is a clothing to clothing initiative. Another initiative is to recycle clothes into fuels, alternative fuel like the one in the picture that you can see. That is actually known as PEF, process engineered fuel. So we are working with this factory in Ipoh that is called Resourceco, and they are able to recycle a lot of the unwearable donated clothes that we receive into fuel that is used by a cement factory. And then thirdly, reuse. We are also donating a lot of the clothes that people give to us to people in need throughout Malaysia. So we do hear a lot, of course, that there's a lot of secondhand clothes that are being donated, and a lot of it are sent to third world countries where it's kind of dumped there. So just to clarify, so far we do not send anything to other countries. Everything that we collect in Malaysia, we're actually distributing throughout Malaysia only. And we are thankful that we have many grassroots partners and organizations that we are working with who are able to deliver them to those in need. So we don't really have any reason to have to send it overseas right now. And we make sure that we are, sorting them, and we are giving them clothes that are in good condition to ensure that the people who receive it are also, treated with some dignity and respect. Okay, another type of product. So from this UNIQLO concept, UNIQLO concept, we have made the recycled down jacket, as I mentioned just now. So how it works is customers can donate their down jackets to our stores. And once we collect them, these are actually sent to our partner factory, Tori. And that's where they do the sorting of the down and feather extraction from these used jackets. So after that, they will cut down the products and transport them by conveyor belt, and all these down and feather are then separated from the fabric, and they are washed and removed all the dust and all that. So once that process is done, this feather is just like any raw material feather that can be used in new jackets again. So I visited the factory here a few days ago as well, just to see the process, and they mentioned that using the recycled down feather is just as good as the new feather. So definitely we would like to expand this to other kinds of products as well, because a lot of customers, they have been donating like cotton or polyester products. So we are finding ways of recycling these materials as well. Then there's also Blue Cycle jeans. So jeans is one of our core products that we are able to sell very well. So jeans, traditionally, they are known to use a lot of water in the finishing process. And one of the issues also is because customers nowadays, they like to wear jeans which have a little bit of a distressed look, which means that it looks faded or worn. So that process actually requires a lot of washing, a lot of intensive labor, whereby the traditionally factories would use pumice stones to create that kind of effect on the jeans where it looks like it's faded. But the problem with pumice stones is that it leaves a lot of powder residue on the jeans. So the jeans would then have to be washed many, many times, even at the factory level, just to get rid of the powder. So we have come up with a technology to use powderless eco stones instead. And these eco stones can achieve the same results while reducing the number of washes. So that helps us to reduce the washing. And also we've come up with ozone mist washing machines that require very little water. In fact, we have been able to reduce the amount of water used in the jeans process by up to 99%. So that has really saved a lot of water in our jeans finishing process. And almost all UNIQLO jeans are already made using this technology. It's over 99% already. So we're just trying to complete the remaining jeans products that haven't started using it yet. So next topic is on zero waste and effective use of resources. So we also have a very ambitious goal to achieve zero waste in all our stores and offices. It does sound ambitious right now because it will definitely involve a lot of cooperation from our customers as well. So one of the steps, the early steps that we have taken to reduce single-use materials like plastic was to switch from plastic bags many years ago to paper shopping bags. And we are using FSC certified shopping bags. So this is the Forest Stewardship Council, which certifies that the paper has come from responsibly managed forests, and it does not come from endangered or ancient forests. So secondly, we've also started charging for paper bags since last year. We only charge 30 cents which is very little if you think about it. But even at 30 cents, we were getting a lot of complaints from customers because maybe they're not very used to paying for paper bags yet. So we do need a lot of cooperation from the public as well if we want to really push for zero waste. Hopefully one day we can have a store with no paper bags at all, and customers will be able to just accept that and be used to carrying their own reusable bags next time. Then third, we have promoted the use of reusable bags by selling more cost-effective tote bags. So our tote bag is only $7.90, and we are hoping that we can actually encourage customers to start bringing this out more often. In fact, internally for all UNIQLO staff, we are not even allowed to buy paper bags anymore. So UNIQLO staff, when we want to shop in a store, we can only, we do not get any paper bags. So sometimes you just see staff like carrying the clothes out of the store because we are not allowed. And hopefully this is something that we can expand to other countries as well. So far, only Malaysia and Singapore have this policy for staff. And then last but not least is to reduce plastic packaging overall. So we have already started with many products. The plastic packaging has been changed to paper cardboard headers, and the product is not covered anymore. So this is also something that we need the public's cooperation on, because when we first switched to remove the plastic packaging, we also got a lot of complaints from customers that the products are not hygienic anymore. So it's challenging because while we want to start removing more plastic packaging, at the same time we still get a lot of complaints from people who prefer to have plastic packaging. So sometimes I actually hope that we can get more complaints from people who complain about our use of plastic packaging, just so that I have more reasons to justify to the global HQ about why we really need to remove it. So another action that we've done to manage waste at the store level, we do get a lot of plastic and cartons from the transport of products at the stores. So we have actually been collecting all this cardboard, plastic from our stores around Malaysia. And for the cardboard, we are upcycling it into notebooks, postcards through the process called pulping, which is just the standard way of recycling paper. And we are turning this into things that we can give to customers and also give to staff. Secondly, on the right, we are also upcycling some of our plastic waste into materials or items like pots, coasters, or keychains. This is something maybe you might be familiar with if you have attended some of the earlier talks, or if you are at UMT, you've seen some of you've seen the plastic upcycling machine. So this was made using the same machine. This is not our end goal, actually. Of course, we would like to upcycle it into things that we can use in our business again, like plastic baskets, something that we can use in the store. But as of right now, we haven't been able to find any partner locally that is able to do that. So if any of you know of any partners who can do that, we are very happy to find out more from you. And for clothes, we've also had many upcycling projects to turn the excess fabric that we have from doing all the pants alterations in our stores and from our faulty clothing into new items. So in every UNIQLO store, whenever we do alterations, we're actually collecting all the small pieces of fabric, and all of this is sent to our warehouse. So once we've collected them, we will then approach social enterprises, or those who are run by refugee women or single mothers, and we engage them to sew this fabric into new products. So these products like card holders or pouches, we don't sell them again, but we give them away to customers. So just to give a little gift to them and to share our message of upcycling and not wasting any fabric. So this is the Second Life Studio. It's a new project that we recently started in April, whereby we are offering free clothing repair and upcycling services in one of our stores in Selangor. So we are starting to do more of these initiatives globally as well, because we want to encourage customers to have the habit of trying to extend the life of their clothing. So sometimes when there's a hole or there's a little damage, they don't have to put it into the recycling bin right away. They can actually just repair it. It doesn't even cost very much. And for now, we're offering it for free until June. So at the same time, through this project, we are also supporting the income of underprivileged sewing women who we are engaging to offer these services in the store. And we have also given free workshops for customers to learn some repair and upcycling techniques. This is done on Saturdays. So we're hoping to expand this repair service to more stores and hopefully to all stores by end of this year, if that's possible. And hopefully you will be able to try that for yourself as well. So other local environmental activities that we have done, this is more focused on environmental. We do a lot for community as well, but I think we do not have time to go through all of them today. So I'll just share about the environmental ones that we have done recently. We did a river cleanup in Kuala Lumpur in Sungai Kero. This was done with staff. We've also done a beach cleanup at the Turtle Conservation Center in Malacca just early this month. So previously we have contributed funding to WWF before to support a turtle conservation nesting site in Malacca in Padang Kamunting. So the funds were used to support the purchase of tools and equipment for the turtle guardians in the area, and also to support the setting up of recycling bins in the village. So the staff also went there to do some beach cleanup and just to have a look at the project site. And these are initiatives that we have done with Terengganu, with UMT. You may have heard of the pulp project so far. So that is the plastic upcycling livelihood project. And for this project, we actually sponsored a plastic upcycling machine, which you have probably seen in the university if you're there. I see that the team is doing a lot of experimenting with it, and that is doing very well. I'm glad to hear that. So this machine, we really believe that is one of the good ways of managing the plastic problem in Terengganu. Because even before we sponsored this machine, we were actually engaging the services of an organization that was able to upcycle this plastic for us. So we were paying the organization to do that. So we hope that in Terengganu, this machine could also be used to approach, to help other companies to upcycle their waste. And from that, they can actually earn an income, and more communities can be supported to start their own plastic upcycling, maybe small business in their area. And then secondly, we also did adopt a big project. So this was in collaboration with the local council in Kuala Terengganu, as well as UMT as well, whereby we sponsored 10 recycling stations along the beaches in Terengganu. So I believe already some have been set up, and some of the beach cleanup activities will be conducted in these areas. We're hoping to invite customers to join as well, maybe starting from next month. So we have been very thankful to work with UMT in the past few months. I think since January, we've been working with them. And I'm very impressed with what the students have been doing. Every time I see like an artwork or some videos that they have made, I'm always so impressed. And I'm hoping that we can even hire them to do some of this work for us in the future. So I've almost come to the end of my presentation today. Just wanted to share that UNIQLO, we're constantly pursuing a business model where we can communicate how lifewear equals sustainability. It is a very lofty ambition, considering the size of our business and the amount of clothes that we produce. But we are very sincere about this, that we really want to make clothes that are of good quality and of timeless design. And we want customers to enjoy our products for many years to come. So our ultimate goal is to only make, distribute, and sell what is necessary, which means to be able to produce only clothes that customers will buy and not to have any wasted products. So we are very committed to not destroying or discarding any unsold inventory. You may have heard before that there have been clothing brands that burn the stock that is unsold. So that does not happen in our business. We definitely do not waste any of these products. Whenever we have extra stock, we clear it by having discounts, or we actually transfer it to the next season or even to other countries so that they can consolidate and sell them. So we do not want to send any clothes to the landfill at all. And we are continuing to pursue a business model to eliminate waste. So that's our founder there, Tadashi and I. He strongly believes in sustainability, and he believes that is ultimate goal of our company, and for the good of our society and as a whole, great change starts with us. So thank you so much to UMT once again for giving me this opportunity to share about UNIQLO sustainability. And I'm happy to take any questions if any of you have. I may not be, so familiar with the scientific part or the marine part of it, but I'll try to answer as best as I can. Thank you so much.
Okay, wonderful talk, Miss Diane, I suppose. Uh, thank you, Miss Diane and Mr. Ron, for this sharing session. Apparently, Dr. Boo has raised his hand. Do you wish
Yes,
to
I
say
do.
anything, Doctor?
Yes, please. Thank you very much, Diane, for the great presentation. I would like to have a few questions with regards to the efforts has been done by UNIQLO. I mean, thank you very much for the great efforts on upcycling or recycling the clothes. So you did mention about sustainably producing clothes using PET bottles, and as well as reusing the dowels for the jackets. So how about recycling UNIQLO's clothes for to reuse the fabric for another, repurpose the fabric for another clothing lines? Is there any, what are the obstacles that we may experience if you want to do that? Like, for example, the old-fashioned clothes, you want to take it back and repurpose it for another fashion line. Is that any possible?
You mean another fashion line by UNIQLO, right? Not another brand, right?
Yeah, no, yeah, like another, like another, like for example, you get a old T-shirt of a UNIQLO, you repurpose it to become a shirt of UNIQLO.
Yes. That is what we are doing with the down jacket so far. We get the old down jacket and we repurpose it into new ones. But I think what you're talking is something more advanced. So we are looking for solutions in that. We have really um, tried out with some cotton products, and like we have made some jeans that is made out of recycled cotton. But the problem is to do with the quality. So for natural fibers like cotton, we find that when we recycle it, sometimes the quality is a bit less. So we can't achieve the same quality with the recycled cotton. So we still have to do a lot of testing because we want to make sure that ultimately when we use recycled materials, it doesn't result in lower quality products, or it doesn't result in more expensive products. So our recycled material items are supposed to be the same price as the non-recycled ones.
And the second question will be, is there any incentive for the public to submit their old clothes to UNIQLO for repurposing?
No, we don't actually encourage that. We have done some small incentives just for some campaign, like where we will give them a little freebie for donating clothes. But generally, throughout the year when we collect clothes, we don't have a program to give out vouchers, because for two reasons. Firstly, is we want people to donate sincerely. So we want them to feel like they are making a real contribution, and not just to get a voucher. And secondly is we also want to be very sincere in taking back clothes. We don't want people to just give us clothes so that we can give them a voucher so that they can shop more at UNIQLO. So that is why we do not really believe in giving vouchers for clothes. Maybe a small gift is fine once in a while.
Sure. Thank you very much. Thanks.
You.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Boo. So, I do have few questions too. Like, first of all, about the Second Life Studio. So, Miss Dan, Does this repair service applicable for all brands, or it's only specified to UNIQLO's? I mean, UNIQLO products only.
It's for UNIQLO products only. So because we've only done a pilot project for 3 months, we are focusing on UNIQLO products. It's also because we know the products better. And in the future, if we are going to expand it, we need to provide the same quality that we are having for our new products. That means even in the sewing or maybe the zips or the buttons that we use, we should be using something that is of the UNIQLO standard. So that's why we are only focusing on UNIQLO items.
Very well, Miss Diane. And also we have a question from the crowd. Thanks, Diane, for excellent presentation. I have a question in regards to cloth production. Do laborers, workers for cloth production come from countries like Bangladesh or Vietnam?
Yes, we do have partner factories there, Bangladesh, Vietnam, and in fact, we have factories in 11 countries. These are not owned by us, but we work with partner factories.
Oh, okay. But may I know where's the main factory, the homeland? It's Japan, but the manufacturing.
Yes, the main production country is China. So we have that's the country that produces the most amount of UNIQLO clothing. But I've also visited the factory in China. I guess the question comes from someone who is very interested in the condition of the factory, I believe. So I have visited myself, and I think China tends to get a negative reputation sometimes. When people hear made in China, then they start to worry about the condition and all that. But I've seen the factory, and it's really very advanced, and it's very clean. Even the people there, they're working in air conditioned rooms. So of course we have certain standards for people who want to work with us. So we have a supplier code of conduct, and we do a lot of auditing, and they need to meet a lot of criteria before we can call them our partner.
Very well, Miss Diane. And I got a question. Is Mr. Ron gonna continue with part 2, or there's no part 2?
No, I think we are done with our presentation. Mr. Ron, his voice will not let him, his throat will not let him continue with part 2.
I hope he's doing good. So, is there any questions from the crowd? No. Okay. So thank you, Miss Diane and Mr. Ron, for this sharing session. Looking forward to people buying from UNIQLO. Hope so I can get some discount too. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay, anyway, thank you again, Miss Diane. Sorry you were unexpected. We thought it was Mr. Ron, so like the introduction was mainly about him, and thank you for replacing him. We have reached the end of our talk today. We would like. Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Miss Diane. There's a question.
Yes.
What is the future UNIQLO products? Like, is there any new products we can expect from UNIQLO?
Oh, this is top secret. I cannot share.
Oh.
Well, we have a lot of products that will be made with more recycled materials and more innovative, more functional products. So we are constantly upgrading our products based on what customers say. So the voices of customers are very important to us. In fact, we always encourage like feedback, and from there we will revise the products that we made. So things like Arism and Heat Tech, even though they are very our core products that we have made since many years ago, even those are being constantly updated. And of course, when we find out more sustainable ways of making them, that's also going to change the durability, maybe to make it more durable and to increase the functionality of the product. So sorry, I cannot share the future UNIQLO products.
Okay, no worries, Miss Diane. I believe it's top secret, and we'll be waiting for the products to be launched. Hence, we have reached the end of our talk today. I hope there's no more questions popping off from the chat box. We would like to wrap up our 3 days webinar series, and big thanks to the speakers for the powerful and fruitful talks, and I hope we all can implement the knowledge we obtained today and previous days in our life and share them to our family, friends, and other people. Also, thank you to the audience for lending your ears. Don't forget to scan and fill up the attendance link. The good from God, the unfortunate from ourselves. See you again and happy World Ocean Day. Thank you so much. Signing off, Deepanraj Subramanian.